The night was unusually quiet in the small town. Snow fell softly from the sky, covering the streets in a thin, white blanket. Streetlights flickered as the cold wind whispered through the empty alleys. Most people were asleep, warm and safe in their homes, unaware of what was about to happen just a few blocks away. Near a narrow alley, a faint sound could be heard. At first, it was just a soft, almost unnoticeable whimper. But as the minutes passed, it grew louder. A tiny, fragile cry echoed in the silent night. It was the sound of a newborn baby, abandoned and alone, lying in a small cardboard box on the cold, snow-covered ground. The baby's little hands were shaking, and its tiny body trembled with fear and cold. Every soft cry seemed to vanish into the night, swallowed by the quiet streets. The baby had no one to protect it. No mother, no father, no older siblings, just the harsh winter night. The freezing air nipped at its skin, and the soft layer of snow beneath the box offered no comfort. The newborn had been left there, and every passing minute made the danger greater. Hypothermia could start within moments, and if no one found the baby soon, the consequences could be fatal. A few streets away, Officer Daniels was making his nightly rounds. His police canine, Rex, trotted alongside him, his black fur glistening under the streetlights. Rex was a highly trained German shepherd, strong, disciplined, and loyal. He had been trained for months in search and rescue, tracking, and protection. But tonight, even the experienced officer did not know that Rex's instincts would be tested in a way they had never imagined. As they walked, Rex's ears perked up. He sniffed the air, sensing something unusual. His body stiffened, his tail lowered slightly. There was a sound in the distance, soft but persistent, almost as if someone or something was calling for help. Officer Daniels noticed the change in Rex's behavior immediately. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, kneeling down to get a better look at the dog. Rex did not answer with words, of course, but his focused gaze toward a nearby alley said everything. Without a moment of hesitation, Rex darted toward the alley. Officer Daniels followed, calling the dog's name softly, but he knew Rex would not stop until he found the source of the sound. The snow crunched under their feet as they approached, and the soft cries grew louder. When they reached the alley, the officer froze. There, lying in a cardboard box half covered by a thin blanket, was a newborn baby. The sight made his heart pound. The baby's eyes were barely open, and its tiny body was curled up in an effort to stay warm. The blanket offered little protection against the cold, and the snow around the box threatened to seep in. Officer Daniels knelt down slowly, careful not to startle the infant. He felt a mix of shock, fear, and urgency. How could someone abandon a newborn like this? Who could leave a child alone in such cold and dangerous conditions? The officer did not have time to think about the questions. What mattered now was saving the baby. Rex, sensing the danger, did something unexpected. He lowered his body gently into the snow next to the cardboard box. Slowly, he wrapped his body around the baby, using his warmth to protect the fragile child. The officer watched in awe. This was instinct, pure and natural. The dog's training and loyalty had led him to this moment, and he understood, in his own way, that the baby needed him. Rex's soft fur pressed against the child, and for the first time since being abandoned, the baby felt some warmth and security. Officer Daniels carefully moved closer. "Good boy, Rex," he whispered, his voice calm but full of emotion. He had seen Rex do many incredible things before, but this act of courage and compassion touched him deeply. The officer quickly checked the baby's condition. Its tiny chest was rising and falling slowly, and its cries had softened. The warmth from Rex's body was keeping the newborn alive for now. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an hour. The cold wind continued to blow, and snowflakes landed gently on Rex's fur and the baby's tiny face. Officer Daniels wrapped his coat partially around the box to give extra protection, but he knew it was Rex who was truly keeping the child safe. The dog refused to move, his gaze alert, ears twitching at every small sound. He seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, that the baby's life depended on him. As they waited for help, memories of other rescues flashed through Officer Daniels' mind. He had seen lost children, injured animals, and dangerous situations, but nothing compared to this quiet, fragile scene in the alley. The newborn's tiny fingers clutched at the blanket, unaware of the danger it had survived and the hero at its side. The officer felt a deep sense of admiration for Rex. The dog was not just following orders. He was making a choice, using his instincts to protect life. Suddenly, distant sirens could be heard. Paramedics were on their way, alerted by a call from a concerned neighbor who had heard faint cries earlier. The officers stayed close, talking softly to the baby and keeping an eye on Rex. "Help is coming," he murmured. The dog's ears twitched at the sound of the sirens, but he did not move. His body remained wrapped around the infant, shielding it from the cold as the minutes dragged on. The officer noticed something remarkable. The baby, once crying frantically, had grown calm. Its tiny eyes blinked, and it seemed to find comfort in Rex's presence. The dog's warmth, his steady breathing, and his protective stance were enough to provide a sense of safety that no blanket or coat could match. In that quiet alley, under the glow of a flickering streetlight, a silent bond formed between the abandoned newborn and the heroic K-9. Officer Daniels could not help but feel a surge of emotion. He had trained with Rex for years, but nothing could prepare him for this moment. Here was a dog risking his own safety, lying in freezing snow, doing everything he could to protect a human life. The officer placed a hand gently on Rex's back. "You're amazing, boy," he whispered. Rex's ears twitched in acknowledgement, but his focus never wavered from the baby. The cold grew harsher, and the snow fell more heavily, but neither the officer nor Rex wavered. They waited together, a team bound by purpose and urgency. The newborn, so tiny and fragile, depended entirely on them, and they understood the weight of that responsibility. It was a race against time, against the cold, and against the danger of the night. Finally, the sound of emergency vehicles grew louder, and the red and blue lights reflected on the wet, snowy streets. The officer carefully opened the box, but Rex did not move. He remained beside the baby, ensuring it would not be left alone even for a moment. Paramedics rushed to the scene, their eyes widening at the sight of the newborn and the heroic dog. They quickly assessed the baby's condition and prepared to transport it to the hospital. Even as the paramedics carefully lifted the child, Rex stayed alert. His training had prepared him for many situations, but this act of pure protection came from his heart. Officer Daniels knelt beside the dog, placing a reassuring hand on his head. "You saved a life tonight, Rex," he said quietly, voice filled with awe. Rex looked up at him, eyes calm but attentive, as if he understood the praise. The newborn, wrapped in warm blankets and carried safely into the ambulance, had survived the night thanks to an unlikely hero. The officer could not stop thinking about the courage and selflessness of his canine partner. In a world that sometimes seemed harsh and unkind, moments like these reminded him that hope and bravery could be found in the most unexpected places, even in the heart of a dog. As the ambulance drove away, Rex and Officer Daniels remained in the alley for a moment longer, watching the fading lights. The snow continued to fall softly, but the danger had passed. A life had been saved, and a bond had been formed that would never be forgotten. The night, once silent and cold, now held a story of courage, love, and loyalty, a story that would touch the hearts of many once it was told. And so, in that quiet, snowy alley, a newborn's life was preserved not by chance, but by the instincts, courage, and warmth of a remarkable canine who risked everything to keep a tiny human alive. The ambulance sirens faded into the distance, leaving the quiet alley once again under a blanket of snow. Officer Daniels looked down at Rex, who was still standing alert, his black fur dusted with snowflakes. The dog's eyes reflected focus and concern, almost as if he were thinking, "Is the baby safe?" The officer knelt beside him and gently patted his head. "You did an incredible job, Rex. Nobody could have done what you just did." Rex barked softly in response, then sat down, scanning the alley carefully. Even though the baby was now being taken to the hospital, his instincts remained sharp. He had fulfilled his first task protecting the infant from the cold, but in his mind, the night was not yet over. Officer Daniels knew his canine partner well. Rex had a sense of duty that went beyond training. He wasn't just a police dog. He was a guardian, capable of extraordinary acts of bravery and compassion. As the officer walked back toward the patrol car, he reflected on how fragile life could be. The thought of that tiny newborn lying alone in the snow earlier made him shiver. How could anyone abandon a child like that? The streets of the town were usually safe, but tonight had reminded him that danger could appear in the most unexpected forms. Yet, amidst the fear and sadness, there was also hope by the courage of a dog who understood exactly what needed to be done. Back at the hospital, the baby was rushed into the emergency room. Nurses and doctors worked quickly, wrapping the infant in warm blankets, checking vital signs, and ensuring that the body temperature was rising. The baby's cries had faded into soft whimpers, soothed by the warmth and gentle touch of the nurses. The medical staff were astonished to hear the story from Officer Daniels about how a canine had risked his life to keep the newborn warm. Meanwhile, news of the incident began to spread. A few neighbors who had seen Rex in action shared the story on social media, amazed by the loyalty and bravery of the dog. People commented with admiration, saying things like, "That dog is a true hero," and "Animals are capable of such unconditional love." For many, the story became an example of how courage and kindness could come from the most unexpected places. Officer Daniels stayed at the hospital for hours, watching over the baby until the doctors confirmed that the child was stable. The newborn's tiny hands moved slightly, gripping the soft blankets, and for the first time since being abandoned, it seemed calm and secure. The officers and medical staff couldn't stop talking about Rex. His presence, instincts, and selfless act had given the baby the chance to survive, a chance that might not have existed without him. Back at the police station, Officer Daniels wrote the official report about the incident. He detailed the sequence of events, the discovery of the baby, Rex's immediate response, the dog's decision to lie next to the infant to provide warmth, and the successful arrival of the emergency team. While writing, he paused multiple times, remembering how the snow had been so cold, how the baby had shivered, and how Rex had stayed so calm and protective despite the freezing night. As he closed the report, Officer Daniels looked at Rex, who was resting on the floor of the station. The dog had returned to his usual calm demeanor, but remained alert, ears twitching at every sound. Officer Daniels felt a deep sense of pride. He had trained Rex in many ways, but nothing compared to witnessing his instincts in action, protecting life without hesitation. It was a lesson for the officer, too. Sometimes courage isn't learned. It's instinctive, and sometimes it comes from the most loyal of companions. The next morning, the town woke to news about the abandoned newborn and the heroic canine. The story spread through local newspapers, radio stations, and social media. Everyone was talking about how a dog had saved a baby's life. People were amazed at how an animal, trained for protection and search, had instinctively done something so pure, so selfless, and so life-changing. Officer Daniels received calls from neighbors, colleagues, and even strangers, all wanting to express their gratitude for Rex. Meanwhile, the baby remained in the hospital under careful observation. The doctors were optimistic but reminded everyone that the infant's survival had been delicate. They explained how hypothermia and exposure could have caused serious harm in just a few minutes, emphasizing how critical Rex's actions had been. The officers visited regularly, checking in on the baby's condition, and each time they saw the tiny infant stable and growing stronger, they felt relief and joy. Rex, of course, remained the quiet hero. Despite all the attention and praise, he didn't seem to care about recognition. His reward was instinctive, the knowledge that he had kept someone alive. Officer Daniels often watched him during the day, noticing how the dog's eyes would occasionally glance toward the window, as if remembering the cold alley where the newborn had been found. The bond between officer and canine had grown even stronger, built not only on training, but on shared experience and respect for each other's dedication. At the same time, social workers and authorities began investigating the situation. They searched for clues about who could have abandoned the baby. The cardboard box, a thin blanket, and nearby footprints were examined. Every lead mattered because authorities wanted to understand why a life had been left in danger and who was responsible. The baby's survival, thanks to Rex, had given them hope that justice and protection could follow. Days passed, and the baby's condition continued to improve. Nurses and doctors marveled at how quickly the child seemed to respond to warmth, touch, and care. While medical care was vital, Officer Daniels and his team often reminded themselves that the first warmth had come from Rex, whose body heat and protective instincts had bridged the gap between life and potential tragedy. The town, too, began celebrating the story. Local children drew pictures of Rex, showing him lying next to the baby, while adults shared messages of admiration and gratitude. Some even visited the police station to meet Rex in person, eager to see the dog who had risked everything to save a tiny life. Rex, ever calm and dignified, allowed pats and gentle strokes, but remained alert, his sharp eyes always scanning for signs of danger. For Officer Daniels, the experience was life-changing. He had seen danger, loss, and fear many times in his career, but this event had reminded him of the purest form of courage, selfless protection without expectation. Rex had acted without hesitation, without concern for praise, without thought of reward. His loyalty had created a miracle, and Officer Daniels knew that such moments were rare and precious. The hospital eventually released the baby into foster care, ensuring the child would grow in a safe, loving environment. But even as the newborn left the hospital, the story of that night remained vivid in the minds of all involved. The image of Rex lying beside the baby, shielding it from the cold, had become a symbol of hope, bravery, and compassion. It reminded everyone that courage could take many forms, and sometimes it came on 4 legs. With loyalty in its eyes and warmth in its heart, as weeks went by, Officer Daniels continued his work with Rex. But the memory of that night stayed with them both. He often thought about how life could change in an instant, how fragile a newborn could be, and how instinct and love could overcome even the harshest conditions. Rex remained vigilant, always ready to protect, always ready to act. And in his calm and steady way, he had taught everyone around him a valuable lesson about loyalty, courage, and the power of selfless action. And so, the story of that cold night, the abandoned baby, and the heroic canine continued to inspire the town. People shared it with friends and family, with children in schools, and with anyone who needed a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and bravery could shine through. Rex had risked his life, saved a tiny human, and in doing so, had left a mark that would never be forgotten. The days following the baby's rescue were filled with a mixture of relief, excitement, and curiosity. The small town seemed to hum with talk of the heroic canine, Rex, who had risked his life to save a tiny, abandoned infant. People walked the streets with smiles, often stopping to ask Officer Daniels about the dog and the baby. Local media had also picked up the story, and soon, the entire community knew about the incredible event that had unfolded on that cold, snowy night. Officer Daniels, however, remained focused on his duties. He knew that even though the immediate danger was over, there were still responsibilities to handle. He visited the hospital regularly, checking on the baby's condition. Each time he entered the room, he felt a mixture of hope and tenderness. The newborn was growing stronger, its tiny body responding well to warmth and care, and the cries had turned into soft coos. The medical staff were impressed by the infant's resilience, noting that its survival was nothing short of miraculous. Rex, meanwhile, continued his training and patrols, but there was a noticeable change in him. The dog seemed calmer yet more attentive, as if the experience had deepened his understanding of his role. He often stayed close to Officer Daniels, walking beside him with a quiet confidence, ears perked, eyes sharp. The bond between the officer and his canine partner had grown even stronger, built on shared experiences, trust, and a mutual sense of responsibility. The town had begun to celebrate Rex as a local hero. Children drew pictures of him lying beside the baby, shielding it from the snow, while adults shared stories of the dog's courage online. Some residents even visited the police station just to see Rex in person. Officer Daniels welcomed them warmly, explaining how the dog had instinctively understood the danger and acted without hesitation. Rex, ever dignified, allowed gentle pats and scratches, but he remained alert, his focus never wavering. While the attention was heartwarming, Officer Daniels knew that the story was also a reminder of deeper issues. The baby had been abandoned, left alone on the cold streets, and questions remained about who had done it and why. Social workers and authorities continued to investigate, following leads and searching for any clue that could explain the situation. Officer Daniels provided detailed accounts of the night, noting everything Rex had done and the circumstances of the rescue. At the hospital, the baby began to respond more vividly to human interaction. Nurses noticed that the child's tiny fingers would curl around their hands, and the infant would make soft gurgling sounds when spoken to gently. It was as though the newborn had an innate ability to sense safety and warmth, a response perhaps strengthened by the protection it had received from Rex that first night. Officer Daniels would watch quietly during these moments, marveling at how instinct and care had combined to give the baby a second chance at life. One morning, as the officer arrived at the hospital, he found a nurse smiling warmly. "The baby had its first laugh today," she said. "It's small, but it's there. Can you believe it?" Officer Daniels nodded, feeling a swell of joy in his chest. That tiny laugh was more than a sound. It was a symbol of hope, of survival, and of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. He thought of Rex, lying beside the newborn in the snow, and realized that the dog had played a crucial part in creating this moment. The community's support for the baby grew stronger with each passing day. Local businesses donated clothes, blankets, and baby supplies, while families volunteered to help provide a safe environment for when the child could leave the hospital. The story had become more than just a tale of bravery. It had sparked a wave of kindness, showing how people could come together to protect and care for the most vulnerable. Officer Daniels often reflected on this, realizing that one night of courage had inspired countless acts of generosity and compassion. Rex continued his patrols, but was always ready to respond to emergencies with the same courage he had shown before. The canine's training had prepared him for dangerous situations, but what made him remarkable was his instinct to act selflessly. Officer Daniels noticed that Rex would occasionally pause during patrols, as if recalling that snowy night, and then continue with a renewed sense of purpose. The dog's presence reminded the officer and everyone who heard the story that heroism could come from the most unexpected places. Meanwhile, authorities had made some progress in their investigation. They found traces of footprints near the location where the baby had been left, and neighbors reported seeing a person hurriedly moving through the alley around the time of the abandonment. Though the details were still unclear, the officials were determined to find out what had happened. Officer Daniels provided testimony, explaining the timing, the conditions, and the way Rex had reacted to the situation. His detailed observations helped investigators understand the urgency and severity of the incident. At the police station, the team began discussing ways to honor Rex for his bravery. While the dog did not seek recognition, Officer Daniels and his colleagues felt it was important to acknowledge his extraordinary act. Plans were made for a small ceremony where the community could express gratitude to the canine who had risked his life for a newborn. The idea was met with excitement, as many felt that Rex's courage had not only saved a life, but it also inspired an entire town. As the baby continued to grow stronger, Officer Daniels often took a moment to reflect on how close the infant had come to danger. The snow, the cold, and the empty alley had all posed deadly threats. Yet, through it all, Rex had remained steadfast, using his body to provide warmth, protection, and comfort. The officer realized that while humans could plan and prepare, sometimes instinct, loyalty, and compassion were what truly made the difference. One afternoon, a child from the neighborhood visited the hospital with their parents. They brought a drawing of Rex lying next to the baby, surrounded by snow and light. The child smiled proudly and handed the picture to Officer Daniels. "This is Rex," they said. "He's a hero." The officer smiled, holding back emotion. The drawing captured exactly what had happened that night: the courage, the warmth, and the selfless protection that had saved a life. He showed it to Rex, who looked at the paper with calm eyes, as if acknowledging the praise in his own quiet way. As the days turned into weeks, the baby's foster family was prepared. They had been carefully selected to provide a loving, safe, and nurturing home. Officer Daniels and Rex were invited to meet them, and it was a joyful moment. The foster parents expressed deep gratitude for what Rex had done. They had heard the story, followed the baby's progress, and now they were ready to provide a future full of care and love. For Officer Daniels, it was a bittersweet moment, happy that the child would be safe, yet aware that a chapter of this extraordinary story was coming to an end. Throughout this time, the story of Rex and the newborn continued to inspire people far beyond the small town. Social media posts, news articles, and local television programs highlighted the events, emphasizing the bravery of the canine and the importance of compassion, even in dire circumstances. People were reminded that heroes could be found in the most unexpected places, that acts of courage and kindness could change lives, and that hope could survive even in the coldest and loneliest nights. Rex, however, remained modest in his own way. He did not seek attention or rewards. His satisfaction came from doing his duty, from protecting and serving, and from the knowledge that a life had been saved because of him. Officer Daniels often watched him during patrols, quietly reflecting on the bond they shared, the trust between them, and the profound impact that a single act of courage could have done in the quiet moments. When the night settled over the town once more, Officer Daniels thought back to that first encounter in the alley. He remembered the shivering baby, the cold snow, and the unwavering determination of his canine partner. It was a night that had tested courage, loyalty, and instinct. It was a night that had shown that even in the darkest moments, there was room for light, warmth, and hope. And so, as the baby grew stronger, and as Rex continued his work with Officer Daniels, the story of that snowy night remained alive in the hearts of all who had heard it. It was more than just a tale of rescue. It was a lesson in compassion, bravery, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. It reminded everyone that heroism does not always wear a uniform or speak a human language. Sometimes it has fur, sharp eyes, and a heart full of instinctive love. The snow had melted, leaving the streets glistening under the morning sun, but the story of that cold night continued to ripple through the town. Officer Daniels arrived at the hospital early, eager to check on the newborn once again. The baby, now a few weeks old, had grown stronger each day. Its tiny fingers reached out instinctively for warmth, and its soft coos and giggles were a sign of life fully returned. The doctors had begun preparing the child for foster care, but the memory of the night it had been saved lingered in everyone's minds. Rex, as always, was by Officer Daniels' side. The dog had become a local symbol of bravery and loyalty, yet he remained humble, unaware of the attention he had garnered. The officer patted his head as they walked toward the hospital entrance. "You're a hero, Rex. The baby is getting stronger every day because of you," he said. Rex simply wagged his tail slightly, his calm eyes reflecting a quiet confidence. To him, it was just part of his job, though everyone who knew the story understood it was far more than that dot inside the hospital. The foster parents-to-be were waiting. They had been carefully selected to provide a loving, safe, and nurturing home for the infant. As soon as they saw the baby, wrapped snugly in a warm blanket, they were overwhelmed with emotion. Their eyes glistened with tears of gratitude, not only for the gift of life they were about to nurture, but also for the courageous canine who had made it all possible. Officer Daniels smiled, knowing that the child's future was in good hands. The baby's eyes followed every movement, curious and alert. Though too young to understand the events of that night, the infant seemed comforted by familiar faces. When Rex sat nearby, his ears twitching in his quiet, attentive way, the baby calmed further, as if recognizing the protector who had once shielded it from the cold. The scene was touching, a silent testament to the bond between human, animal, and life itself. Doctors and nurses provided updates to Officer Daniels, explaining that the baby's health had improved remarkably. The tiny body was strong, the breathing steady, and the infant's reactions to touch and sound were encouraging. It was almost as if the child had inherited some of Rex's resilience and determination, responding to the world with cautious curiosity and the will to survive. The officer felt a wave of relief. That cold night, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a story of hope and recovery. The story of the heroic canine had now reached beyond the hospital walls. Local media outlets, social media pages, and even national news had shared the tale. People from neighboring towns, and even further away, had expressed awe at Rex's bravery. Messages of admiration, gratitude, and love poured in, emphasizing the powerful impact of the dog's actions. To many, it was not just a story about an abandoned infant. It was a story about courage, loyalty, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Officer Daniels noticed how much the baby's presence had affected the hospital staff. Nurses would often smile when passing the crib, watching the infant stretch tiny limbs or blink curiously at the ceiling lights. The doctors, too, often spoke in hushed, awed tones about the miraculous recovery. And though Rex could not understand words, his calm and protective demeanor seemed to reassure everyone, as if saying, "Everything will be all right." "I am here." One afternoon, a local journalist came to the hospital to interview Officer Daniels and take photographs of Rex. The journalist asked about the dog's instincts, training, and the exact moments leading to the rescue. Officer Daniels described the night in detail: the snow, the silence broken by the baby's cries, and Rex's immediate reaction to lie beside the newborn to provide warmth. The journalist listened with wide eyes, clearly moved by the story. "It's incredible," they said. How did you know the dog would react that way? Officer Daniels smiled softly. I didn't, but Rex has always had a strong sense of duty. That night, he acted with courage and instinct. And he saved a life. Rex, as the camera clicked, sat quietly, as if aware that his actions had touched many hearts. Though he did not seek attention, his calm presence conveyed the weight of his bravery. Officer Daniels noticed visitors in the hospital quietly watching, some whispering in awe, others taking photos or drawing sketches inspired by the dog's heroism. It was clear that Rex's actions had made an impact far greater than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, social workers and authorities continued their investigation into the abandonment. They had gathered statements, footprints, and other evidence from the alley where the baby had been left. The details were still unclear, but the community's focus remained on the positive, the survival and recovery of the child, thanks to Rex. Officer Daniels provided continuous updates, emphasizing the urgency of the situation and the role Rex had played in keeping the baby safe. The foster parents were finally able to take the baby home. Officer Daniels accompanied them, ensuring a smooth and safe transition. The baby, wrapped securely, seemed calm and secure, responding to the warmth and care of the new parents. When Rex sat beside the infant during the farewell, the foster parents were touched. They realized that this dog had not only saved the baby's life, but had also been a silent guardian, watching over the child even when no one else could dot as the foster family left the hospital. Officer Daniels reflected on the journey. From the cold, quiet alley to the warmth of recovery, every step had been a testament to courage and loyalty. Rex, ever vigilant, had remained by his side, his presence a constant reminder of what true bravery looked like. The officer knew that the baby's survival had been a delicate balance of chance, care, and instinct, and that the story would continue to inspire people for years to come. Back at the police station, a small ceremony was planned to honor Rex. Community members, local officials, and even the foster parents were invited. Awards and certificates were given to the dog, celebrating his bravery and selfless action. Children drew pictures, and people shared letters of thanks and admiration. While Rex did not understand the ceremony in its entirety, he accepted pats, scratches, and gentle words with calm dignity, his quiet strength leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Officer Daniels spoke to the crowd, explaining how Rex had acted instinctively, lying beside the newborn in the snow and keeping it warm until help arrived. Rex didn't hesitate, he said. He understood the danger and acted with courage. He showed us all what it means to protect, to care, and to act selflessly. Tonight, we celebrate a true hero. Applause filled the room, and Rex's eyes gleamed with quiet intelligence, as if he knew he had done something meaningful. The story continued to inspire acts of kindness throughout the town. People shared blankets with neighbors, volunteered at local shelters, and paid extra attention to the welfare of children and animals. The narrative of Rex and the baby had become more than a tale of rescue. It had become a symbol of community, hope, and empathy. Everyone who heard it felt reminded of the power of courage and the importance of compassion. Even weeks after the incident, Officer Daniels often reflected on that snowy night. He remembered the fragile cries of the baby, the chilling cold, and Rex's unwavering determination to protect life. Each time he thought of it, he felt gratitude, not just for the dog, but for the reminder that bravery and love could come in forms we sometimes overlooked. The night had tested courage, patience, and instinct, but it had also shown that life could be saved by a combination of selflessness, awareness, and action. And so, as the baby thrived in its new home, and as Rex continued his work with Officer Daniels, the town carried forward the story of that remarkable night. It was told in schools, shared in conversations, and passed down as an example of extraordinary courage and loyalty. Rex had not only saved a life but had inspired a community, leaving an unforgettable mark on the hearts of all who had witnessed or heard of his heroism. The baby's foster parents often sent updates to Officer Daniels and the police station, sharing photos and little milestones, first smiles, first laughs, first attempts at crawling. Each update was a joyful reminder of that night in the snow when courage had triumphed over fear, when instinct and loyalty had given life a second chance. And every time Officer Daniels looked at Rex, he was reminded that true heroes did not seek recognition. They acted because it was the right thing to do. Months had passed since that cold, snowy night when a newborn had been abandoned in a quiet alley. The baby had grown stronger and healthier with each passing day, thriving in the care of a loving foster family. The tiny cries that had once filled the air were now replaced with soft laughter, curious babbles, and the first attempts to crawl. Each milestone was celebrated not just by the foster parents, but also by Officer Daniels and his canine partner, Rex, who had been a silent hero from the very beginning. The town continued to remember that remarkable night. Stories about the abandoned baby and the brave canine had been shared countless times on social media, in newspapers, on television, and even in schools. Children would listen wide-eyed as teachers described how a dog had risked his life to protect a tiny human being. Adults reflected on the courage, loyalty, and selflessness that Rex had displayed. The story had become more than an event. It had become a symbol of hope, reminding everyone that acts of kindness and bravery could make a real difference in the world. Officer Daniels often looked at Rex during patrols, noticing how the dog's posture had changed over time. Rex was calm, confident, and always alert, as if the events of that night had strengthened his instincts and understanding of duty. The bond between officer and canine had deepened beyond words. They had faced danger together, shared moments of tension and triumph, and now shared a quiet understanding of what it meant to save a life. The foster family frequently sent updates and photos of the baby, showing the child's growth, first smiles, and tiny achievements. Each update brought a sense of joy and relief to Officer Daniels and everyone involved in the rescue. He often imagined the moment the baby would be old enough to understand what had happened, and he hoped that one day the child would know the incredible role Rex had played in their survival. The thought warmed his heart as the baby grew. The foster parents made sure to share the story with the child, framing it as a tale of courage, protection, and love. They spoke about Rex, the loyal canine who had laid beside the infant in the cold snow, keeping the child safe and warm until help arrived. The parents emphasized the values of loyalty, compassion, and selflessness, using the story as a lesson in kindness and courage. Even though the baby was too young to fully comprehend the words, the story became a part of their life, a reminder of where they had come from and how precious life truly was. Meanwhile, the town organized a special ceremony to honor Rex. Community members, local officials, and families gathered to celebrate the dog's bravery. Certificates, medals, and a small commemorative plaque were presented, highlighting Rex's heroism and his selfless act that had saved a life. Children drew pictures, and families shed letters of gratitude, all inspired by the dog who had become a symbol of hope. Rex, calm and dignified, accepted the attention with the quiet confidence of a true hero. Officer Daniels stood beside Rex during the ceremony, pride evident in his eyes. Rex didn't think about himself that night, he said to the gathered crowd. He acted instinctively, selflessly, and bravely. He protected life when it was most fragile, and in doing so, he showed us what courage truly means. Applause filled the room, and Rex's tail wagged slightly as he listened. Though he didn't understand the ceremony in human terms, he seemed to sense the gratitude and admiration surrounding him. The story of the baby and Rex began to inspire the town in other ways. People donated to local shelters, volunteered at child care centers, and shared acts of kindness throughout their neighborhoods. The narrative had become a reminder that even small actions, when guided by courage and empathy, could change lives. Officer Daniels often reflected on this, realizing that the events of that night had sparked a wave of generosity and awareness that extended far beyond the rescue itself. Back at the foster home, the baby was thriving. The parents watched with joy as the child explored the world with curiosity and innocence. They often recounted the story of Rex, explaining how the dog had kept the infant safe when danger loomed. Each retelling reinforced the idea of bravery and protection, helping the child grow up in an environment that valued care, compassion, and gratitude. Officer Daniels occasionally visited, checking in on the child's development, always accompanied by Rex, who remained calm and protective even in a home setting. The hospital staff also continued to follow the baby's progress. Doctors and nurses expressed admiration not only for the infant's resilience, but also for the extraordinary role that Rex had played. Medical professionals often discussed how life-saving the dog's instinct had been, especially in the first critical moments after the baby had been abandoned. Rex's presence had bridged the gap between danger and safety, showing that courage and empathy were not limited to humans. Months later, Officer Daniels reflected on the journey from that first night to the present day. He thought about the cold alley, the baby's fragile cries, and the courage it had taken for Rex to lie beside the infant. He remembered the warmth that the dog had provided, not just physically, but emotionally, creating a sense of safety that allowed life to continue. For the officer, the experience had reaffirmed his faith in loyalty, instinct, and the power of selfless action. The story of Rex and the newborn had become a part of the town's identity. People referred to it when talking about bravery, community, and hope. Children drew pictures, families shared the story with friends, and local events celebrated the life-saving actions of the heroic canine. Rex had become more than a dog. He had become a symbol of protection, courage, and love, a living reminder that even in the darkest, coldest moments, life could be saved by selflessness and care. Officer Daniels often sat quietly with Rex after long days of work. He would reflect on how much that one night had changed their lives and the lives of so many others. He realized that the bond between humans and animals could be profound, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Rex had not only saved a life, but had taught a lesson about bravery, loyalty, and compassion that would endure far longer than the memory of a single snowy night. Even as the baby grew older, and life returned to a sense of normalcy, the story remained alive. The foster parents made sure the child understood the miracle of that night, highlighting Rex's role and teaching values of gratitude, courage, and empathy. The child, though too young to remember the events firsthand, grew up surrounded by stories of heroism, learning that life could be precious and that acts of love and protection could change destinies. The town never forgot Rex. Plaques, articles, and stories celebrated his actions, ensuring that future generations would know about the dog who risked his life for a newborn. Schools shared the story with children, emphasizing the importance of kindness, loyalty, and courage. Families told the tale around dinner tables, reminding everyone that true heroes could come in all forms. Even four-legged ones did, and so, life moved forward. The baby thrived in a loving home, surrounded by care, warmth, and security. Officer Daniels and Rex continued their work, patrolling the streets, helping those in need, and watching over their community with unwavering dedication. The bond between man and dog remained strong, strengthened by the events of that unforgettable night in the hearts of everyone who knew the story. Rex's actions became a lasting reminder that courage could appear in unexpected forms, that selflessness could save lives. And that love and protection often came from the simplest, most instinctive acts. The baby's survival, thanks to Rex's bravery, had inspired a community, strengthened bonds, and left a legacy of hope and inspiration for years to come. And in that quiet, small town, every time Officer Daniels looked at Rex, he knew that the story was not just about a rescue. It was about trust, loyalty, compassion, and the incredible power of selfless courage. A life had been saved, a hero recognized, and a community inspired. The snowy night had passed, but the warmth and courage of that remarkable canine would be remembered forever.